Hi, guys. My name is Kenneth. Kenneth Leroy Ford is my full name, but most people call me Ken or Kenny. Ford is my last name, just like the car, Ford. I'm popping on here today, and I made a commitment to myself that I'm going to start just videotaping myself, talking about my life, talking about my life as a homosexual male who is also a Christian. And I get it. I get it. I know for a lot of Christian people in the faith who've accepted Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior would say that that's an oxymoron. Like you can't be both, or you can't embody both. So, I honestly, I really don't know if you're right or if you're wrong. I'm just going to speak to you from my perspective, and either certain things will ring true. Um, you know, I'm always open to broadening my walk with Christ, and you know, I pray to never have a spirit of where I am stiff-necked, a stiff-necked person, or a person who in Christ who has a haughty spirit. So I'm definitely open to you know uh, differences of opinion. I mean, as long as a person presents them to me with respect. Because you know I don't really need anyone to agree. It's funny, I don't need someone to agree or disagree. It's my life. So I mean, you cannot agree with my life, but even that statement sounds like what would the word be? Um, Spiritual arrogance. So I totally believe that there are mysteries to life that none of us get to know unequivocally until we zip out of these flesh suits and our spirits fly away to wherever they go. So while we're yet in this physical experience, in this physical realm, you know, I guess, people need to feel secure. So people need to pretend like they know that they know the certain mysteries of God. But I've always felt like that was arrogant in the eyesight of God. I'm okay sitting in the mysteries of God and saying to God and being okay with living spiritually in the I don't know. I do realize Christians and non-Christians alike have a hard time with that. They need to know, or at least pretend like they do know. But I don't really know anybody that has died, decomposed and everything, you know, turned to ashes, to dust, and came back to tell me what it was like over there in the non-physical realm. And I know as Christians, our faith is that, well, yeah, there is one. Jesus did it. And okay, I don't know of anybody else, and certainly not anybody in contemporary times um, that can tell me unequivocally and prove it and raise the veil and show me a glimpse of what it's like over there and come back and to really know. So I'm okay with saying, you know what, I really don't know. There's a lot of things that I don't know, and I'm okay as a Christian saying that. But so what I want to talk about my life, and my walk with God, is that I realized recently, since I've made a commitment to be celibate, to live a chaste life, a life of chastity. I'm not a virgin, so I can never go back into my mother's womb and be born again in the physical to be a virgin, but I can be born again in the spirit. And in that spiritual rebirth, I can make a sacrifice to my God, and lay my lust on the altar of God and have God help me each and every day, one day at a time, one moment at a time, to bridle my lusts and my desires that transcend even beyond sex or sexuality. So what I want to talk about specifically is how I see homosexuals or homosexuality and lesbians, and the difference between being born with certain attractions or feelings and acts. Because I think in the Christian church, and it's not even just the Christian church, society at large conflates those two things. So I see a huge difference between having same-sex attraction, like being sexually or erotically attracted to someone of your same sex or your same gender. I'm not even sure if I still understand what these crazy trans people are. I don't understand gender and sex. Like, you know what I mean? Biological sex and sodomy, right? Now, people believe, I think even homosexuals believe, and you'll notice I really work really hard, and I'm working harder every day to reclaim back the true meaning of words. Like, words are very important. Words are important in general, right? So there is this softening of certain words, because certain people experience certain words, I guess, to be hard or harsh. So there is this evolutionary play of changing words, and I personally believe changing words to create more of an emotional dissonance from the truth, right? So I don't say gay anymore. I used to say it for many years, but I don't say it anymore. I say homosexual, right? And even that doesn't quite get it. Like, I'm also in an evolutionary process where I'm like, no, because it's saying, accepting that word homo and putting a sexual connotation on it sets one up to buy into, whether they themselves are the homosexual or it's a heterosexual person, that their whole identity is wrapped up into sex, right? So we are all homo sapiens as humans. I kind of like that because I am a homo sapien biologically, and I am physically, and I guess you could say sexually too, attracted to men, right? And I have had that proclivity as far back as I can remember, which is about 4 or 5 years old. I'm one of those strange people that I can go all the way back. I have recollections of myself in a crib where before I even had the command of speech, I have like images, flash images. I can remember being a baby in diapers. I was standing up and holding onto the edge of the crib and everything, but I was a baby in diapers. I can remember, not a lot, but I have images of that I can remember, recall, and so what the thing about homosexuality, we'll just use homosexual for now because I haven't figured out what really feels fitting, and sodomy are two different things. And I know right here is where I'm probably gonna, I don't think I'll actually piss off Christians, but some of them may be uncomfortable with this because it's going to be a little bit ego deflating for them in their walks with Christ. Sodomy, anal penetration, penetrative sex anally, which we used to call sodomy, and I think we need to go back to calling it that, which is tethered to the story as a part of the story in the Bible about Sodom, right, is something that is and has always been perpetuated by same-sex attracted people and opposite sex attracted people. So debauchery and any of that, I'm at a loss for words, but knows no sexual orientation. So, like, back in olden times when certain tribes would take over other tribes, overpower, there'd be wars, overpower tribes, and they would come into the tribes, and then, whoever won in that particular battle oftentimes would take the women and children and kill the men, or sometimes kill everybody. It was very barbaric in those times. I think people forget about how barbaric it was. It was pretty commonplace when sexual violence would take place against male or female by the conquering nation as a form of humility to sodomize the females. And sometimes the males too. And even when it was done to them, it was looked at more as a way to humiliate a man and demasculinate a man. And it's a form of violence. Like, it's extremely painful because we know that orifice is an orifice of elimination, right? It's for waste to come out of. It's a orifice where things are supposed to move down and out, not up, not in the opposite direction, right? And there are a lot of heterosexual males, if we're really being honest with ourselves, and you'll see where I'm going with this in a minute. And believe me, I'm not going to try to deflect off of what the homosexuals are doing, because we're right in there too, right? So this is not, simply because I'm gay, this is not building a case for sodomy or building a case for homosexualities or any demographic of anybody, straight or I don't like to say the G word, homosexuals, heterosexuals or homosexuals, right? So, and, here's the thing. My experience isn't just anecdotal. I'm a fitness trainer, right? I've been in the fitness industry for, over 30 years, 30 some odd plus years. And before that, in my other life before that, I was a hairstylist, a cosmetologist, a beautician. I mean, even for a short period of time, I had my own hair salon and everything. So, and I did that right out of high school for about 33 years also. And at one point, the hairstyling and the personal training intersected. But yeah, I was a hairstylist first. And I always worked somewhat in an entrepreneurial type of vein, right? So I've had a lot of females sit in my chair over the course of 30 some odd years and heard a lot of different stories from people from all over the globe. And because I am a homosexual male, women would often feel very comfortable with me, sharing things with me. It's like a phenomenon with homosexuals where women are able to, or feel as though they're able to have conversations with them that they can't with with their heterosexual counterparts, right? Because we do often have a window into the feminine and the masculine, and so we could stand on the cusp of those two perspectives, and oftentimes give a very enlightened perspective, right? So they would tell me things, and so I know, factually speaking, and I've also had guys tell me this too, that have anal penetration sex with their wives, or want to, or at some point or time, either when they were dating or after they were married, asked them to. Now, these are males that have access to their girlfriends or wives, and this also Christian males in the Christian marriage bed. You're going to be mad at this, but it's true, who pressure their wives, as they used to say back in the day, let me enter through the back door, even though they have full access to vaginal sex, right? So what I'm saying is that anal penetration is anal penetration is anal penetration, whoever's doing it. And homosexual people do not have a monopoly on anal sex. So, and here's another thing that I think a lot of, straight people don't know. And I'll say gay just for, I'm not afraid of saying the word gay, but I just prefer homosexual. Gay people, that all gays do not have anal sex, or don't like it, or think that it's disgusting, or think that or maybe they tried it once very early on initially, and it was just like painful. It was a traumatic experience, and then never did it again throughout their whole entire gay life. So this idea that when you are gay, or if you come out to your community or your family as gay, that what is a part and parcel of that is that you are either going to be giving or receiving in some form of anal sex engagement. Now, although, obviously, I haven't done a consensus, I don't have statistics or anything like that. This is just I'm surmising this, that probably more gays than not do have intercourse. I don't even want to call it intercourse, because intercourse to me can only take place between a man and a woman, because there's nothing being procreated through that. So therein lies another issue with it. But right now we're talking about the heterosexuals, and I'm including heterosexual males who are Christian and who are married and who are having intimacy within the marriage bed, are participating in that, or at least trying to convince their wives to do that, even though they have full access to her vagina, still wanting that. So in other words, I guess the word I was looking for before was degeneracy. Gays do not have a monopoly on degeneracy. And heterosexual men do have sexual fantasies about doing that. Even though they have full access to the front of her, they want the back as well. Right? And there's no procreation that comes out of that, as there is no procreation that comes out of oral sex. That opens up a whole another wider range of people to include under that umbrella, under acts that I believe are degenerate and against the laws of God and nature. Because the truth of the matter is, y'all, soap and toilet paper hasn't even been around that long. It's a blip in a drop of water in the ocean, how long our uptick in how for us to take care of our own personal hygiene and things like toothbrushes and toothpaste, um, toilet paper, uh, you know, for many, many, many centuries, you know, rags and anything they could get their hands on, females used during their time of the month. So nobody was doing all of that because of just of the probably the stench. Honestly, not to be too gross or too graphic, that extended because now you have heterosexuals also, and this is because they've followed us gays actually in a lot of our degenerative practices. Now you have, with the onset of the OnlyFans and all that kind of stuff, you have a lot of heterosexuals going down on people's buttholes. Like, so it's not even just penile or vaginal oral sex, it's anal oral sex. That's the most respectful way I could say it. And it is more prevalent in the homosexual community, but all homosexuals are not down with that. And it's always been that way that, I think that there's like straight men and probably straight women that would be like surprised or shocked to hear that. Well, then what are you going to do if you don't do that? Because see, my whole thing is I believe that gays are doing that because they're trying to be straight. And I know, like you're saying, like what? Like, no, they know that they're gay, but they are mimicking the way heterosexuals make love or make out or have sex. Because, you know, vaginal to penile sex can only happen in a heterosexual situation. So the whole thing about two men doing what they do, or two women, usually a lot of times, one of the females in a lesbian situation, whoever's like the more masculine one or the more butchy one, will put on a strap on. And so, and even putting aside penetrative sex for a minute, I have a whole ideology around oral sex. So that's going to open it up to almost everybody, because there are Christian men and women who say, I've given my life to Christ and I waited to marriage, so now all bets are off. But no, you can be degenerate inside the Christian marriage bed. Let's be honest. If we're going to be really honest, we have to be honest. So, no, gays don't get let off the hook for their lasciviousness. But when you take it outside of the different attractions that people have, okay, heterosexuals are attracted to the opposite sex. Gay males, homosexuals, are attracted to other males. Lesbians are attracted to their own sex, other females. Now, we could judge that, but we need to judge that on its own, apart and parcel from the perverted acts, different sexual acts, different things that people do in their bedroom, separate from that. And there's something that's very interesting that happens when you do that, when you're looking at being fruitful and multiplying, going forth and being fruitful and multiplying, and the acts that are in correlation with that and the acts that are not. It transcends sexual orientation. And I don't think a woman, or a man for that matter, giving a man oral pleasure is in accordance with God and nature. And I don't believe that a man going down on a woman is healthy or in alignment with the natural order of things, just as is two men doing those things or two women doing those things. And I'll see that spiritually begins to level the playing field. And I don't think anybody really wants to address this because there's something in human nature where we always want to feel like we have more favor with God, or we want to create this where some are spiritually or morally superior to others. I think it's ego that has a lot to do with that. So I have made a decision to be celibate, and I have made a decision to no longer, because I had I'm 65 years old, I actually came out openly as a gay man back in, I think, 1976 when I was 14, so I've been an out, active, openly gay man all those years, whatever that is, 55 years almost, and have participated in that type of debauchery and everything, so, I'm not here to judge anybody. God knows I've had enough sex for 3 men's lifetimes. Like if I never had sex ever again. So, I can't, there's so many, skeletons in my closet. Well, they're not really skeletons because I don't have any shame. I talk about what it is. And I got to tell you, all of that sex that I had, another reasons why I'm moving into being celibate, because when I look back over the course of my life and I look back over all that lust and I look back over all that giving into my flesh and all of that sex and stuff that I had, there was no ROI. There was no return on investment. The only thing it left me with is diseases, a broken heart, a disappointed soul, and a life lived lackluster of what my true potential could have been, or if God gives me grace, still can be, because I'm an extremely healthy 65-year-old and fit 65-year-old with no real comorbidities. But it did left me with STDs and all manner of things, so it really never delivered on what it, it's a liar basically. On what it promised to deliver, it led me in and then dropped me, and then led me in and dropped me. It never made good on its promises. Whatever it was promising to give me, it didn't give it to me. And it wasn't just a sum zero game. It actually negatively impacted me. So the way the gay community and even the therapist, straight therapists, gay social justice work, no one is talking about this. Like everybody is telling you how you could better foolproof and more sanitize, which is impossible, the act of anal penetration. But never are they talking about it's not healthy for you. It's not good for you. And interestingly enough, we all know that Chat GPT and Grok and all that has biases. But even when I went down a Chat GPT rabbit hole around this, Chat was trying to convince me how, it's not really harmful. And, if you do it right, like obviously I'm paraphrasing, but it actually went on to say, not in every instance. And I know that that's not the truth, because there are little teeny tiny very micro blood vessels in your rectum and at the entry point of your sphincter, and all those kind of things, and thousands and thousands and thousands of, maybe millions of nerve endings. So anytime an act like that occurs, it's violent. Like, people, and I don't know about in the straight community, but in the gay community, then it domino effects, right? Because they use something called poppers, which is like a rush, like a something that they snort, or just drugs, illicit drugs, to desensitize themselves in order to be able to do it. There are so many guys that I've been with that, even though they've been doing that for decades, will say, no, I need to have these poppers to do it. Why? If it's so natural, and if it's so, because we're so in upside down land that we have healthcare professionals, sociologists, psychiatrists, psychologists trying to convince you that your rectum is a sex organ because you have a prostate, and that if something goes far enough into that canal and sort of tickles your prostate, and you feel some kind of way from it, that is proof that it's a sex organ. Like, how delusional is that? You're trying to convince me that the same orifice that fecal matter comes out of, feces comes out of, is a sex organ? And again, that does a whole host of other things. It also tries to minimize or reduce the responsibility and the beauty and wonder of reproduction and childbirth and procreation. But again, I think, I know this video is getting really long. I'm rambling a bit, but yeah, I'm not the average gay person. I'm not the average homosexual. And here's the thing you guys need to know. Like, all my life, even though I did indulge in that, there was a lot of peer pressure as a kid. For many young men that find, like me, I discovered it at 5, and then I kind of came out to myself inwardly at 11, and then I let everyone else know in the world know at 14. So I had a recollection of this very early on in life. But even way back then, just like I guess there's peer pressure for female virgins, which there's hardly any now, but female virgins experience peer pressure from their adolescents and early teenage girl groups to lose their virginity. Well, it's no different in, young gay male circles because when someone first comes out, it's not like they've all already done that. Like, they haven't, and you have these young gays now, contemporary gays, because the term, if you are submissive or the effeminate, you're taking on the effeminate role, they call that being a bottom, because you're like, you get it, you're on the bottom, right? And the top is supposedly the masculine one who's topping you on the top of you, right? So tops and bottoms, which all these terms I hate. But anyway, that I encountered so many young teenage boys that are discovering that they may have this, I think it's actually a spiritual gift, but we're not using it as a gift. We're not using it as God intended it to. That's going to have to be the topic of another video. What? I know Christians are screaming, that ain't no damn gift. How the hell? hold your horses. Because I do think that people that have this thorn in our side are actually called to a higher calling. And a part of that spiritual calling, honestly, since we're not attracted to the opposite sex, that means we're not able to be fruitful and multiply. So that doesn't mean go out and live a life of lasciviousness and, debauchery and all that. It actually means you now have a higher calling to God. It means you are called, like God is taking that, and now you don't have to be split between your ministry and a wife and children. You get to, because you have this thing, you're called to actually live a life of sort of a priesthood. But in the sense that the difference is you're not trying to say, oh God, remove it from me, going to conversion therapy, all this, because even that is spiritual arrogance, because you're saying the mind of God, right? And that this is something that needs to be removed. Well, it could be removed if he sees fit to remove it, but that doesn't mean that you can't be effective in your Father's work and you can't raise up the kingdom of heaven if it's never removed and use it as a source or a crux to completely devote yourself to Christ and his kingdom and his flock. Because you don't have to split your energies between supporting a wife and kids and all of that. I believe that that's really the calling, but again, it's a lot for me to try to put into one video to express myself in the way that I'm trying to express myself. And I hope some of this is coming across, because not that we stand between two worlds, but when you have this thing, I don't even know what to call it yet, but it's a thing. It's a something, but God can use anything for good, right? Because women and men will never ever be able to completely understand each other. And I do not believe that every human soul that's born on the planet, all like a monolith, is supposed to procreate. There are even heterosexuals that can't, bear children for one reason or another. But so there are a large majority of people that need to procreate and should be procreating, but that doesn't mean everybody does just because you do. Like, that's another thing. That's another assumption. Like, oh, I know the mind of God better than God does. Oh, no. He said, be fruitful and multiply. He did say be fruitful and multiply, but he didn't say everybody needs to be fruitful and multiply. Just said go forth and be fruitful and multiply. He didn't say who that go forth was for. That, every human being that is born from now to time immemorial needs to be reproducing. So I do believe that gays and lesbians are not a mistake, and we're not an abomination, but we do engage, a large portion of us engage in an abominable acts. Sinful acts. And I already explained to you, I'm not going to go over that anymore, that there's a lot of straight dudes and females that are engaging in anal penetration and oral. If they're not doing anal, they're doing oral. Ain't no procreating coming out of that either, right? And it used to be back in the day in the Western times where, and these were men that were of low morals. Obviously, a lot of them had wives. But in order to get some of that stuff, like oral and like a woman letting you hit it from the back and all of that, men knew back then that there were good girls and there were, prostitutes and, women of the night, whatever you want to call them. And in order to get those types of acts, Wives wouldn't even do that. It wasn't like wives were not even given oral sex back in the day. Like that was something you had to go to a sex worker. And men would, a lot of them married, some of them Christian, would go to sex workers to get anal sex and what have you, right? Or engage in homosexual sex. So I just wanted to put that out there that we got to start really doing a deep dive into this, right? A much deeper dive spiritually. And I realized that, like, I took all the sex apps off my phone. I did all this. I'm 10 days in. I know that's not a lot of time. You know, maybe not. It's too early to even be talking about it. But, like, where one day at a time, just like I practice my drug and alcohol recovery. I've been clean and sober for 35 years. You know, I had a really bad drug addiction, and God helped me to overcome that back in 1991. But I didn't know what I know now then, and I realized that, you know, lust. Like, if you really look at the 7 deadly sins, and the operative word is on deadly, and that may mean physical death. It certainly can mean a physical death. But even if it's not physical death, it's definitely a spiritual death. That's why they call them 7 deadly sins. Gluttony, like overeating. How many fat, obese Christians are there? Sloth, being lazy. That knows no sexual orientation. That's those two right there. Well, pride, lust, gluttony, sloth. That gays don't have a monopoly on that. That transcend. Those are human conditions, and they exist in the professed saved person who profess Christ, and the person that needs to be helped to be brought to Christ. You know, so now you have this. It's starting to surface to the point where on some of these gay hookup apps and hookup culture, a term has arisen called being a side. In other words, I'm not a top, I'm not a bottom, I'm not versatile. Versatile gays, for you straight people that don't know, is someone who will flip flop, will do whatever. Now the terms of this, so that's 3 terms. So there's a 4th term called aside, meaning I don't engage in all that. But even those sides that are self-proclaimed sides, meaning they do not like, they are not interested in, you know, nor have they ever been, or maybe they tried it once or twice and figured out early on, oh, hell no, I'm not doing that again. Which is a lot of gay people that are like that, but they're never talked about. Call themselves a side. But even though they're sides, most of the sides do engage in oral sex, whether it's oral anally or oral penally, or with lesbians, oral vaginally. And see, I expand it beyond just the whole, you know, sodomy. It's sodomy. Like, you know, think about this, like, and not even olden times, you know, a lot of times they don't put out the details when sexual assault happens, or grape, as they say, happens, male to female, you'd be surprised how much more than not that female has not been vaginally violated. Nobody's talking about that. So are you telling me that, oh, that somehow it's a lesser of a sin because at least it's a male sodomizing a female and it's still heterosexual sex? Because see, that's what a lot of, I think, or maybe people have never thought about this until now. I don't know. I'm going to wrap it up because it's coming up on 45 minutes, which is long, and I don't even know if I'm ever going to post this or not. But yeah, it's just things that make me go, like Arsenio Hall used to say on his show, things that make you go, I sit around sometimes or I sit in the park and I talk to God and I go, God just brings things like this to me. So yeah, I as a gay man have even the highest of calling is to live a completely chaste life. Because for 65 years, I have prayed and I did all that oils, forced me to, speak in tongue, knock me out, Pentecostal, all that. And I'm not sexually attracted to females. And maybe that's not supposed to be prayed away. But what I am 100% sure on is sodomy and oral sex of any kind between any two human beings, male and or female, same-sex attraction or opposite-sex attraction is a sin. And with that, I'll end it. Thank you for listening.